Hey, friends, welcome back to the Freedom Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host and business mentor, Lindsay Sutherland. And joining me today, we have a phenomenal guest, Jerry Brazie, who is the founder and CEO of the Kronos Group. All that's great, but what's really awesome is his story because we're talking about from, troubles to triumph. And this is a kind of guest I love to bring you because we all have our own struggles we're dealing with. And it's so encouraging when we can hear somebody who's made a transformation and who stands in a whole new light. And I'm excited for you to hear his story. So stick around because it's going to be a really inspirational day. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to this show on whatever podcast player you prefer and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Hey, it's Lindsay, and I want to pop in here because I know how overwhelming it can be to get started building an online business. I've even spoken with people who've paid thousands of dollars for help from people who are truly experts in this, and they're still feeling confused about what direction is right for them, or if their idea is even a good one. Listen, you don't have to guess or pray or hope or any of that. There is a way to test the market to ensure your idea is a good one so you can launch with confidence. And that's exactly what I show you in this simple 35-minute video training. I keep it simple because I know you already have so much swirling around in your brain. I'm not here to add more confusion because what you need right now is clarity. And that's what's in store for you in the short training called How to Tell If Your Idea Will Be Profitable. Access the video right now by texting the word freedom to 55444. Stop guessing and start taking strategic action. Text freedom to 55444. All right, back to the show. All right, Jerry, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Lindsay, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for letting me get out here, tell my story.
Absolutely. I mean, the world needs to hear these kinds of things because, like, we were just saying, we all go through this. This is something we all struggle with every day. And tell us, kick it off, like, tell us your story. What happened in the life of Jerry Brazie?
So the kind of the beginning is to know anything about me, you have to know about my mother. I have 8 brothers and sisters, and so my mother had 6 kids when she was 23 years old. She brought
Mm.
home a brand new infant, and at home she had a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old. That's 6 kids, the oldest being 5 years old, largely by herself. My dad was out and about, and my mother raised my older brothers and sisters. And then 7 years later, I came along, and they didn't want me to be an only child, and so I have a little brother and a little sister. And so my mother slept every other day for a decade because she was, I mean, we didn't have a dryer, didn't have a washer. She's got 2, 3 kids in diapers all of the time. I mean, any mother can imagine what it would have been like with 6 kids, 5 years and under, largely doing that by herself with none of the kind of the things that we all have today. So that was, I grew up in abject poverty, but I had that example in front of me. Was my mother never complained, never said a word. I never heard a negative word out of her mouth about the life that she was living as I watched it from afar. And so that example stuck with me. Now I'm a kid from the streets, and so I was no education. I was living with hookers and heroin addicts at 17 years old. I've been beaten within an inch of my life multiple times, one of which was a huge epiphany for me and changed my life and my business at 14 years old. And I've just gone through the ringer, if you would, as I kind of figured things out. But I always knew how to work. And so when I had these older brothers and sisters that I could kind of watch, because again, my next oldest sister was 7 years older than me, and then it went up from there. She died coincidentally on her 21st birthday, actually on her 21st birthday. And 4 months later, I went blind in my right eye. And a couple of months later is when I got robbed and beaten and attacked, and I had this huge epiphany. And so my life in the early days was one of those unstructured, kind of crazy backgrounds that you can't imagine. But I got a job at 11 years old. A restaurateur took me in. I paid taxes 1980 as an 11-year-old, if you can believe it. I paid taxes every year since. I've had a job every year since I was 11 years old. And that taught me it connected 2 things, taught me one big thing. Food and work went together. And so I used to steal, my little brother's 20 months younger than me, and we used to steal food together when we were little from the stores. And we had all these scams and these secret pockets and coats where we could steal Snicker bars and all of these sorts of things. And I mean, I was the very definition of a latchkey kid. And it was all really Lord of the Flies stuff. And so, but inside of that are a lot of lessons. And so as I got that job at 11, I figured out that they gave me a meal at the end of the day. And I was a busy restaurant Saturday morning, getting there at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm 11 years old, just throwing dishes left and right like a madman. And at the end of it, they let me pick a meal. And I picked a club sandwich. I remember it like it was yesterday. Club sandwich, came together, and they 4 pieces and fries in the middle. And that's more food than I had ever seen. My whole life was protecting food because I had 6 older brothers and sisters. My brothers would eat everything in the house. And so my mother would ration the food off for us little kids. I mean, this was my life. And here they gave me this giant sandwich. Now, I'm not lying. I remember this so clearly, Lindsay. I would have worked for that sandwich and those French fries that entire day. On top of it, I got paid what turned out to be $2.35, $17.33 was the check net. And I would go down to the local store, cash that check for dollar bills. So I had a big wad like the rich guys did on television, and I'd be able to, flip through that wad of dollar bills. And so that kind of was the baseline for me, understanding that work and food always went together, something that I went on to teach my kids and something that I still haven't forgotten today. So for me, it's about everything is about survival, regardless of the amount of luck that I've had, the amount of hard work that I've done, and the things that I've made happen for me. That's kind of the background. My childhood set up all of the things that I went on to do in business.
That's an incredible story. I mean, just to imagine. So like when you were saying you were in your teens, I think you said when you were living on your own, you'd left home,
Mm-hmm.
you were 17.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
How long were you in that space, I guess, before you started like you said you had an epiphany when you were 14, but you were still living on the streets when you were 17. Like when did it actually start to kick in and something started to change?
So I'll tell you my story. The most important story of my entire life is the epiphany I had at 14 years old. At 14 years old, I had a job. I was working at International House of Pancakes now on Saturday and Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning and a couple of nights during the week. Again, I always had a job while I was going to school. I get a bank card. And for a poor kid from the streets circa 1983, a bank card was a big deal. Something with your name on it was a big deal. And so I got money out of the bank. In those days, you had to leave $5 in the bank. I had $85 and I took 80 out. Now, I'm a street kid. I know how the game is played. I didn't catch the guys watching me. They got me on a busy corner, and they put the living beating on me, broke my nose, broke 2 ribs, rolled me underneath, took everything I had, and rolled me underneath of a bus stop and left me middle of August. I wake up a couple hours later, roll myself out, blood coming down my front, both eyes are black. And I get on the bus and I have a transfer to try to get myself home. I pass out at the transfer point for a couple hours. It's starting to get dark. I get on another bus to get myself home. And now I have about a 2-mile walk. And this was Portland, Oregon. I have business still in Portland, Oregon. I live in Tennessee now. I go back once a month for a week. And every time I do, maybe every other time I do, I will drive by this spot. It's still there right before you go over the interstate freeway. It's an extra big square in the sidewalk. And for some reason, as I'm walking home, beaten damn near to death, I hear a voice off to the right. Now, there's a little fourplex unit right there. And I thought somebody was yelling at me through the window. True story on my children's eyes. And the voice said, "Everything is your fault." Now, again, I'm bloody and beaten and just in pain and misery, and there's no one waiting for me when I get home, right? I know exactly what I'm dealing with here, but it said, "No one's your fault." Now I turned and looked, thinking someone was yelling at me outside of the out of their window of the house, but they weren't. And the voice said, "Everything's your fault. Whatever you do going forward, this is all on you, or you're going to end up like them." Them is nebulous, right? Them is the world that I was surrounded with. And what was that? Jiminy Cricket, God telling me something that, I'm beaten. So don't even know what's going on half of the time. I don't know where it came from. I didn't have a counselor. I didn't have somebody telling me what to do. I didn't have any instruction. My sister had just died, who was actually my next oldest sister, who was more like my mother because she raised us. She had just died. I had just gone blind in my right eye, almost lost my left eye. And then here I am just having gotten beat. And that message, by the way, I went home. I have a little nubbin on my side of my nose. My nose had cracked open. I went home for 3 days and just held it shut until it stopped splitting. And that's kind
Oh
of
my
how,
gosh.
when you grow up poor, that's how you go to the doctor. And the ribs still give me trouble to this day. But, again, it's just one foot in front of the other. But the message, the epiphany, that voice, that actually outside my head voice stuck with me. To your question, the answer to your question, it didn't take off right away. It wasn't a hockey stick. I had to go through a whole lot of, and I've been stabbed and beaten again and all kinds of, been in 100 fights. And I mean, I'm just a tough kid I saw murders and suicides and everything you can imagine I saw growing up. And I had to progress past that. But the common denominator was I always had a job. I always went to work. So when I'm living with hookers and heroin addicts in this $25 a week flophouse, watching them as I go out to work, they're coming back. When you're living in that environment at 17 years old, I'm still going to my job because I knew I had to go to my job. And so that job then turned into another job. And I always left one job because the next one would pay me more. And I constantly worked up that ladder until I landed at a transportation company where I said, I'll take a job driving. I was 21 years old. I'll take a job driving. I'm good. I like driving. It's fun on your own. The dispatcher at that business turned out to not be very good. And so after 6 months, I went to the owner of that business and I said, look, let me dispatch. And she's like, I'm not going to let you dispatch. This person's been at it for a while. I say, okay. I said, I'm assuming you're paying her about 40 grand. I'll do it for $10 an hour. And I'm talking a job where the phone just rings constantly. The radio never stops. You're moving things around all day. It's 10 hours a day. And I said, I'll do it for $10 an hour. But this is my street smarts, right? This is my common sense. This is the thing that I've hired 10,000 people over my career that I've always looked for. I've never looked for a piece of paper. I don't care where anybody went to school. I want common sense and street smarts. You have that, you get anywhere in life. And so at 21, 22 years old, I'm using those common sense street smarts. And I said to her, I'm going to save you all that money. I'm going to do it for $10 an hour. It's a terrible job, $10 an hour, 6 months. But at the end of 6 months, if I've done the job for you, you let me keep it and you pay me what you paid her. I did that job for 3.5, 4 years. I grew that company to about $5 million in revenue, running all of the operations. But I did it because I knew at $10 an hour, I was willing to sacrifice myself, never complain, never put in a bad word, going back to my mother, and just sat there. And I made the decision to invest in myself. She could have just told me, get lost and saved all the money, and away she went. But she was like, no, this is your job. And I went and my first salary there was $45,000, which was more money. I had never made more than $10 an hour for the most part up to that point. So that was more money than I could have ever imagined. But I saw an opportunity. I stepped in. All she could have done is said no. Of course, the answer to any question never asked is always no. And so I was, what I got to lose? I'm going to go try. Otherwise, I just go back to driving for her.
Yeah. But so like, I'm waiting for when did you start your business? Like, when did you launch the Kronos Group, or how does that all tie together? Because
yeah, so I did that job for a few years. I was 28 years old. I had a son sitting at home that had just been born, my first son, and I got an offer I had some bit of a reputation in Portland and in the Northwest generally because I was good at running the operations of these transportation companies. And so I got an offer to start a new business. Now they wanted me to be the front side of it, be, the person out doing the sales, the communication with customers, the one growing it. And they'll be the kind of the finance and the accounting on the backside, but I'd run the business. And they sent me a pro forma, and I'm sitting at my desk, and the pro forma sitting here, second big epiphany I ever had in my life. Wasn't as big as the first one, wasn't nearly as dramatic, but I was sitting in my office and it said, I had this pro forma and I didn't know what I was looking at. I had a, kind of a forward-looking P&L, a forecast. I didn't know what I was looking at because I knew operations and I had people older than me working for me, and it was big, busy, and I had grown it from 30 employees to 100 employees, and everything I knew about business came out of Inc. magazine and Forbes and Fortune. And so here I had this in front of me and I didn't know what I was looking at. And that's the second big epiphany, where it said, shut up and listen. The voice came back, wasn't outside my head this time. It was inside my head. Again, not nearly as dramatic, but it said, shut up and listen. You're still going to be doing the same thing you're doing now when you're 50 if you don't shut up and listen. And I took that to heart. My first son had just been born, changed my life. Having my son born absolutely gave me a way different perspective on life. He was not going to grow up how I did. And so I saw this as an opportunity to really change that expectation. And so I did exactly that. I listened to that voice and I shut up and listened. I took their offer. I got rid of all of my friends, which was mostly just playing sports, talking about sports, going to the bar, playing sports, talking about sports while we're watching sports, right? I got rid of all of them, and I found people that were smarter, accountants and attorneys and people that really challenged me. And then I shut up and listened, which was the last thing the voice said to me. Shut up and listen. So I took that deal, 28 years old. I quit my job. I had a half-built house. I had a brand new son at home. We had a daughter that was on the way, and I had no job, and I jumped. And that business did $3 million the first year. I had 60, 70 employees in the first year. I did what I said I would do. And I ran into a little something that a lot of businesses run into that I didn't have any idea what it was, nor did I have any sense of how important it was: cash flow. The company ran out of cash flow. The people didn't have what they said they would do, or had said what they had, did not have what they said they did. And I went and did what I said I would do, which was grow sales to $3 million. So they came in on my anniversary 1 year and fired me cold. And again, now I've got some experience, though. Now I've ran a business for a year. I grew it from 0 orders all the way up to $3 million a year. And so I flipped around, and in 17 days, I started a new business, my first company that I started on my own. I went to all of my customers from that existing business, banks and title companies primarily, and listen to this. Now I understand how cash flow works. And so I went to them and I said, look, I'm moving again. I'm starting my own this time. I'm not working for anybody else. I'm not a partner in anything. It's all mine. Oh, God. Okay, Jerry, we'll want one more time. I said, nah, I'm not done. I don't have any money. I need y'all to prepay me. And they're like, wait, what? I said, yeah, I need you to prepay me. So I opened that business. We did $4 million the first year. I was bringing in about $225,000 a month in prepayments. They went on to prepay me for 10 or 15 years, as it turns out, long-term customers, before we finally scrapped that for no other reason than we realized it was still going on. And from that point, that company did $4 million the first year. We did $8 million the second year. I did $12 million the third year. I did $14 million the fourth year. And then we were really off and running. And so kind of that 10-year experience from 17 years old to 27 years old, I was working for other people. And then at 28, I started working for this new company. And 29, I started my own. I was a millionaire at 32 or 33, and away we go.
Okay. So it's interesting. I've been taking notes. So your first epiphany was everything is your fault. And the second is shut up and listen. But also in there, you had children, which was an epiphany because that was your North Star. That was your motivation. Like, this isn't happening to them. This is going to get fixed. So you had that drive, let's say.
Yes.
I think you should add that to your third epiphany. That should be your third epiphany.
and it's true. I had a drive. Obviously, I had some criminal issues when I was a kid, and like anybody, but I was able to avoid the bad stuff. Because I saw what happened with my brothers and my sisters. My sisters all got pregnant as teenagers. My brothers all went to jail, and I was able to avoid the worst parts of that as a kid. And so because I went to work, I always had a job. And so having that job, then when my son was born at 28, I was never going to have kids. And my wife and I, we've been together for 30 some years now, and he was born. And I remember going to the phone. I told the story just the other day. I remember going to the phone booth outside at the hospital to call a couple of my buddies to say I had a son. And the second that son came out, my life changed. The way I looked at the world 1 second before he was born, I looked at the world, really 180 degrees the opposite direction the second he came out. And here I was holding him, and I can't believe that this was my son. And then it was like, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong. I gotta go do so. Whatever I've done to this point is meaningless, right? And that really was my inspiration to go and just hammer, just push, just risk, just take it all on. I looked at where I came from and I said, all right, I'm not going to have my kids grow up in this. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to blow it up as hard as I can. I'm going to change institutional generational poverty in a way that no one has ever seen. It's impossible to anyone who grew up dirt poor, abject poverty, understands institutional generational poverty, I call it, because it just wants to drag you back. Your friends want to drag you back. Your parents want to drag you back. Your family wants to drag you back. The community wants to drag you back, because if you get out, that means the way that they look at the world, which is that it's everyone's fault. The hood teaches you everything is not your fault. Everything is everybody else's fault. If one person gets out, then everybody's got to look at themselves and go, wait, he grew up. I saw him get beat up in the park the same as I did. I saw him go without food the same things that I did. I saw these things with my own eyes. Maybe It's not them, maybe it's me. And so that power, that force, that gravity that keeps you in there is very, very difficult to escape. But that, my son being born, I was already on my way out at a $45,000 a year job, right? I was already started. I owned a house. I bought a house at 20 years old. I read a Fortune article that said you need to buy real estate. I didn't know what a mortgage was. I didn't know what an interest rate was. I paid 12.5% interest on an $82,000 house, and I didn't know what any of that meant. But I didn't know what an equity loan was. I didn't know what equity was at 21 years old. But I knew, because of this Fortune article, I had to buy a house. And so
Yeah.
I was responsible that way from the jump. But once you escape and get out, then my son was born, and that was really just the cherry on top. It was time to go.
That's so powerful. I love that. And you know what? That is so true, Jerry, because it could also be mediocrity that can pull people back in too. I mean,
Sure.
you had such a like a black and white. It was so obvious. Like here is this is the path. There's a golden light and then there's a dark light. Which am I going to choose? Like is
Yeah.
very the contrast was very rich. But then the same thing can happen in like the middle class family, the mediocrity where somebody is like raised and life is pretty good most of the time. I mean, you may not be super wealthy, but life isn't necessarily as contrasting. But yet that's still that mediocrity. It's just a mindset. Like what we're, talking about, that mindset of like, if we can choose to risk it and go all in like you did, or we can choose the comfort. Because you could have stayed at that $45,000 a year job
Mhm.
for the rest of your life
Yep.
because it was stable, because it was getting you where you were. Like you had that choice. What do you think it was? I mean, you said it was the voice that said, shut up and listen, but like, what gave you the courage to say, yeah, I'm leaving everything that is working? I mean, gosh, I'm thinking, I'm like putting myself in your shoes, right? There's a
Mhm.
kid that had nothing. You didn't know what it was to have something. Now you have something and you gave it all up. Like, that's powerful. What was the, what was the thing inside of you that gave you permission to leap?
I'll come back to two things. Again, my son. So I have two more kids. I have a daughter and another son. And so I had those kids were all born within about 4 years of each other. And so, but my first son being born, it really was just, again, I'm going to call it, to your point, I need to start changing my story. I've told this story 1,000 times. No one's ever told me I need to start with my son being my epiphany. But you're right. That's absolutely true, because that really was a catalyst for what I went to do. I was so driven that he was not going to have the same life that I did, that he was not going to wear his, 10 years older than him brother's pants 10 years later, right? I mean, if he was going to, my kids always had new shoes, right? They always had whatever I could afford to get them. They were going to have that. They're good kids, and I didn't spoil them, but I spoiled them a whole lot more than I did, than I had growing up. So that was a huge push for me. But when you come from nothing, nothing scares you. I have seen I've seen a gang hit 15 feet in front of me where a guy put two in his head with a 22 because he sold drugs on the wrong corner. 15 feet in front, and I watched him bleed out right in front of me. Right, I've seen people killed in pool halls one table over from me. Right, again, I've been beaten and been in 100 fights, and I come from this lifestyle. I've seen the hookers and the heroin addicts, which there's nothing um, remotely enticing about that lifestyle. Those poor women, right? Most of the heroin addicts were men that hung around, but the women were always the hookers and the heroin addicts, and those poor girls. And when you've seen that, and you've seen what human beings will do to each other, and you grow up in that environment, I didn't want any part of that. So I saw the worst part of it. And so, but when you're that low, what can they do to me? I might as well risk it, because I have this ultimate belief in myself that I'm always going to win. Now, I got to say, I have lost massive fortunes. If we had some, I will guess how much money I've lost on mistakes I've made, and I'm gonna say probably $10 million. Right?
Wow.
I mean, I have lost. I've made some massive mistakes using the same advantage that I'm describing to how I got out and how I made those decisions. So it can get in your way, and you need coaching, and it's great to have people around you to help you try to avoid those mistakes. But again, I've also had huge, massive wins at the same time, because I always think I'm going to land on my feet. I have ultimate belief in myself. I will work like no human being you've ever seen. When I say I worked 18-hour days, I worked 18-hour days for a decade. I'm unstoppable in that perspective, because I am driven to get out while being home every night, for that half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour with my kids, wrestling with them on the floor 80% of the time. If you brought them in here right now, they'd ask you, what did I say to you when I put you to bed every night? What are you going to be when you grow up? Anything I want is the answer. How are you going to get there? I'm going to work hard and be smart. My kids heard that every night, 80% of the time that they went to bed, because I would leave what I was doing, drive home, spend an hour of good quality time with them. They remember this like it was yesterday. And then I would go back to work and continue doing the things that I was doing. So that drive, both to have a successful home life, I've been married, like I said, now we've been together 30 some years. We've been married 28 years. A successful home life coupled with a successful business life is 100% doable. You just have to believe that it is. And again, I'll do a little, just off to a side, just a little bit. This is one of the things that popular culture and the internet, I really disagree with wholeheartedly, which is you have to give up one or the other. And it's just not true. You don't have to. I'm proof of it. My daughter still lives here with us. My son just went into the Army. My other son is going to go into the military as well. I see them every day. I go to dinner with them as much as I want. They're fantastic kids, and I couldn't be happier. And again, I've had this healthy relationship with my wife all of these years while I was doing all of those things, because those things are the opposite of where I come from. And so it just drove me and it just pushed me. But I had an unimaginable belief in myself that regardless of what can you do to me? How bad could it get? So I risk it all. I lose it all. Man, I'm going to go right back, right? I've had a job since I was 11 years old. I'll go get another job. I'll go figure something else out. I'll go do whatever it takes. I'll go do 2 jobs. When you have that and you're willing to do it that way, and approach life that way, yeah, you can almost do anything. I mean, the hardest things in life I've ever done was surviving the mistakes I made. I'm talking millions of dollars, right? And so you crawl back up out of that and keep going and put your feet on the floor and keep fighting. Well, if you've stolen food as a kid and you've watched, people commit suicide in front of you with a 44 handgun, rebuilding your life at 40 years old, there's harder things to do.
Yeah, definitely. That's incredible.
I'm just a realist that way, right? I'm very basic. I'm very based. I don't really get too far outside of that lane. That epiphany at 14 that said, everything is your fault, I take it 1,000% for granted, or 1,000% I live that. Everything is my fault, regardless of who did what to me. I've had people lose me $500,000 on accounting mistakes that have worked for me. The problem was I gave them the ability to make that mistake. The problem wasn't that they made the mistake. It was that I gave them the ability to make the mistake. So all the way from the street to somebody can cost me $500,000 because I made a mistake in giving them the ability to cost me $500,000. That's a tough bridge to cross when you come to it. But again, the power that comes in from everything being your fault as an entrepreneur it's a superpower.
It's true. That's true. What does the Kronos Group do?
So when I was 30, here I was doing about $8 million a year, and I got a cold call from this guy that was in his early 60s, Keith. And Keith came, and I'm refereeing basketball. My company's doing $8 million a year in revenue. I'm refereeing basketball games 4 nights a week and 9 games on Saturday and Sunday just to keep my lights on. So the company's not making any money at $8 million. I always say anybody can sell. The selling is easy. Selling profitably, that's very difficult. That's when you bring competition into it. So I had to learn how to make money. I knew how to sell. I had to learn how to make money. So I was going through that. So I'm paying my bills by refereeing basketball games at night while I'm working on this huge startup, 12 hours a day. And he walks in, I get a sales call, and I answered it. And he comes in, and I'm like, man, I don't have time for this old man. I'm 30 years old, and I got all this stuff going on. And he says, you need to join my group. I'm putting together a peer-to-peer group. I didn't even know what that meant. I'd never heard of such a thing. Mastermind group. I've never heard of such a thing. And he explains to me what it is. And I'm like, what are you talking about, old man? And he gave me the best sales pitch I have ever heard. And it was very simple. And it's the one I'm using as I'm growing this Kronos Group, which is a brand new company for me, which is you can't afford not to. I said, I don't have time, old man. I got all these things going on. I don't even have. He said, you can't afford. I know. That's exactly why you need a peer-to-peer group. You can't afford not to. I said, well, the thing at the time was like $600 a month. I don't have $600 a month. I got $8 million in revenue, and I have $200,000 payrolls due on Monday, and I have no money in the bank on Friday. What are you talking to me about $600 a month? He's like, you can't afford not to. I mean, it's just stuck with me all these years. That group I would go to once a month There's about 8 or 10 guys in the group, and everybody would get a half an hour. So you have to dedicate the time too. So half a day, once a month, and everybody goes around and kind of talks about their problems, and then they act as a board to each other. And then he was a Fortune 500 CEO, and so he would act as the chairman and kind of move the conversation along and make sure people get the advice that they wanted. And so you would hear these experienced business owners. I was 30 with the biggest companies. The average age was probably 50, 55. Those guys are now 75 and 80. And now I'm them at 56 years old. And I just sat again back to that epiphany, shut up and listen at 28 years old. At 30, I was ready to take that on. And I sat in that group for 2-3 years and just listened. And so that group told me not to. My biggest mistake I ever made was buying a company that I couldn't quite figure out the financials, but I was sure I was going to figure it out. I had just come off the biggest year I had ever had, ever in my life, 2011, 2012. And at the end of 2012, I bought this company that I should not have bought. The group told me not to buy it, and it ended up costing me about $7 million in 6 years of nightmare. And so sometimes, even though you have a group, it doesn't always work. But this group been together. We get together one time a year now. So we're even still together 25 years later.
Awesome.
And I just decided it was time to start a group. I have been talking about it forever. I've never done anything that I'm passionate about. So I'm not one of these do what you love people. Opportunities are everywhere. Go get them. I don't love any job I've ever done. I'm in real estate. I've owned car washes, convenience stores, gas stations, transportation companies, woodworking, investment companies, consulting companies, you name it. If I thought I could make or lose money on it, I've tried it. And none of that is my passion. What my passion is taking care of my family and myself. And so I work hard and I work passionately on the things that I'm doing so I can take that money and go follow my passions. And in that vein, I've never gone and done something I'm passionate about until now. I just started here a couple of months ago. I'm just putting the first group together. I'm the chairman this time, and I'm going to bring in people just like as I just described and help them do that thing that I'm passionate about. I hope you can tell, which is business. I love business. I love the ups and downs. I love the harder it is, the more I like it. I'm just a business fanatic. And then again, how you can incorporate business in life, and you don't have to listen to what the people tell you out there about how you have to give up one or give up the other in order to be successful and all of those things, because I have lived that life. And so I'm going to bring that to bear. I help entrepreneurs on a one-on-one basis, but I'm going to try to grow out some groups and see that I can't help maybe on a bigger scale and make a business out of it while I do it. It'll be my first business I've ever done where I'm passionate about it.
That's awesome. Like, I'm so happy for you. And you know what else has been coming up for me lately, which is, I'm listening to you and I'm like, how do I say this? But it needs to be said. There is for me, and maybe this is a movement, maybe I'm speaking for more than just myself here, but there is something about listening to people just raw, I'm so tired of with all due respect to Tony Robbins, I know he's a human and he has a good mission and he has a good heart, but he's so commercialized.
Yes.
And he's all over my feed. It's driving me crazy. I'm like, I'm tired of listening to this guy, but it's that kind of thing. It's not him personally. It's like that kind of like Grant Cardone, all these guys that are I'm a multimillionaire. Let me tell you how to do it. Spend multi-thousands with me and you're going to make, not to say that they're wrong. It's just, I'm burnt out on that, I think. And I think other people are too. And there's like diamonds in people like you who are like realists. Like, let's just look at the situation. Let's make chicken soup out of chicken shit.
Right. Yes.
What you got to do. I'm so grateful that you're doing this. This is so fantastic.
You're blowing me away. You're making my day, Lindsay. You absolutely are making my day. Here's why. All of my market research, well, I'm going to back up. The first person I ever helped years ago, they saw a podcast I was on and they called me and I actually answered the phone and they couldn't believe that it was me answering the phone. And I helped him manipulate his business and do some things that ultimately made him a bunch of money, and he's done very well. And that was and I just wanted to help. I didn't charge him anything. Just call me. I'll help you out. Anybody can call me, right? I'm happy to talk to anybody. And I helped him out. And he said, I belong to this mastermind. But along the lines of what you're talking about, a mastermind group. And I didn't even really know what that was. And so he explained it to me. And him and a couple of hundred other dudes would log in once a week or once a month, and they'd have speakers, and the guys that would run it would tell them all that they were going to do. And he's like, you told me more in 45 minutes. I've been paying $500 a month for this group for 6 months. You told me more in 45 minutes on our call about my business and what I should do than those guys. And I learned from those guys. And right then I was like, oh, there's something there. So to your point, much of my advertising, much of my message is that you get me. There's nothing polished. There's not, I'm not a motivational speaker. I haven't done any of those things. I love to speak. I love to talk. I love to talk about business. But what you get is on the ground, what I got out of my group. On the ground, how am I going to fix my payroll Monday? What can I do to improve my relationship with my wife Tuesday? How can I get more time to spend with the kids Wednesday? What's you, Jerry's practical experience doing that? And personally for me now, I learned everything from business from Fortune and Forbes magazine in particular. Starting when I was 28 years old, I got subscriptions to them, and up until the last few years, I've had them ever since. And that's how I learned business. I have been to 1,000 seminars, and I got to tell you that on the ground, a dozen businesses, $450 million in revenue, huge fortunes and massive mistakes. I've not learned a single thing that I ever took from any one of these big rah seminar guys that I could bring back and actually put to work, because what they can't teach you is the work ethic. What they can't teach you is, to your point that you zeroed in on, where did I get it to risk it all when I had made it at $45,000 a year? I had a house and a kid at home and kind of life was cruising. Why would you go to push that? If you don't have that, it's like abs, right? Ab trainer, and here, buy this ab trainer. Well, ab trainer's no good, and you're not going to eat if you eat more than 1,500 calories a day, right? You got to get rid of all the fat in front of you. So you can sit there and crank out abs all you want, but they will sell you ab trainers at length, because knowing that you could do that, but the ab trainer is not going to help you. It's going to be all the discipline and eating and starving yourself and getting your body fat down and doing all of those things. So I view those guys, I'm happy to hear you say that. They're good people, I suppose. I don't know the first thing about any of them, but I've never been able to take anything they said and bring it back. I get stuff from talking to you. Right? Conversations like this. This is where I think the conversations are. And so I have built the group around my kind of just no fluff, right? No BS, straight talk. Let's deal with the problem. Let me help you exactly with what you're trying to do. What scares you? What don't you want to do? Where are you going? The other guys in the group, right? Again, these groups are more like boards. And so if you set that tone correctly, it can be very, very advantageous. That doesn't mean everybody will get in, because some people just might not be built for that. And I've had people come and go through my group that I was in for all of those years simply because it's too direct. But again, business is a non-emotional thing for me. There's no money in emotion relative to business. You got to change today what you changed yesterday. And if you're not willing to change today what you changed yesterday, then forget about it. And all these guys selling 10x this and 20x that, it's all BS. I've never seen anybody that can do it. I don't know how it would ever work in my business. The guys that tell you that you don't have to work hard in your businesses, I just don't go for any of that stuff, because I've never met somebody who did it. I've never met an entrepreneur that was successful, that came from nothing, that didn't work heart, mind, body, and soul, that didn't risk everything, that didn't put their house up, didn't put everything they had up on the line to make it go when times are tough. They just completely dig in when times are better. You try to, be smart about that, although most of us make even bigger mistakes when times are good.
Yes. That's
right?
funny because, well, my background's in the car business. And I was just telling somebody on a podcast the other day, I said, my money, it's like I've always been good at being able to make money, but keeping it, that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
My little sister, she was like, she made like $800 a month. She is a single mom. She had her own condo. And she would end up with savings. And I was making $8,000 a month at 19, and I had nothing to show for it. And I'm like, if somebody could have just grabbed me by the shoulders and said, Lindsay Renee, knock it off, I wouldn't have listened.
Well, again, I'll tell the story I was telling you. I'll never forget. It was 2012. I made $212,000 in 1 month. That was the biggest month I had ever had. And then I bought that company. And the guys told me not to buy the company in my group. And I never had another six-figure month.
Oh yeah. See,
right.
I know we could do that. That's just, I think that is a whole nother conversation. But at the end of the day, that's one thing that I've always fallen back on whenever I have doubt about what I'm doing. I'm like, you know what? Making money isn't hard. I can do it. I just need to figure this out. And then to your point, it's that cash flow problem. Like you go in and you're like, okay, now let's get somebody like a finance expert or somebody else to come in and actually find the cash flow, manage the books, make it work. But I also like what you said about how you had trusted somebody to do that. And so you still need to know, as a business owner, you still need to know the foundations and enough about it to manage that person so they don't take advantage of you, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
that's 100% true. And again, my we all do it differently, but my thing has always been that I've never seen a truly, and I'm talking millions of dollars a year in revenue. I've not seen a multiple millions of dollar revenue business, a service business run where the owner was not involved all day long, day to
Mm-hmm.
day, all day long. I've never seen it. So I've known hundreds of them. I've known hundreds of millionaires that run businesses that do millions of dollars a year. And I've never seen it. So if it exists like it does on the internet, I'm waiting to see it. I've just never ran into it. That isn't to say that there's not people on the internet that have found some magic formula and have made it work for them. Just in practical terms, I've never seen it. And so for young people in particular, or anybody starting out, if you think that your business is going to be a 4 hour a week program and you're going to make $10,000 a month, you're kidding yourself.
Mm-hmm.
In my estimation,
Especially in the
it's just
beginning.
not
I agree
reality.
with you.
Yeah.
I don't know, you don't know the history of this podcast, but when I first launched it, it was called the Passive Income Examiner. And that was because I was on a journey of trying to learn about passive income because I was believing all these things like, and I would have these guests come on that are like, I
Yeah.
make 30
Passive
grand a
income.
month just selling my membership and stuff. And, that's great and good for them. But what I started to realize is I was feeding the get rich quick scheme mindset thing. I would have
Yeah.
people call me and say, I'm going to quit my job in 3 months. What should I do? And I'm like, don't quit your job. Like, start something and keep it going while
Right.
you're, and so I ended up rebranding because I'm like, no, I don't want to be feeding that mindset. So that's why we're
Some
there.
of the most vociferous arguments I have had online is over passive income. Because I can always tell when someone doesn't know anything about passive income when they tell me they don't do any work to earn the passive income.
Yeah.
That means to me they took a picture in front of a Ferrari they saw on the street, and they have no idea what they're talking about. Because
Right.
I have owned hundreds of homes. I'm a developer. I have a 36 lot subdivision I'm working on right now. I've developed hundreds of lots. I've built hundreds of houses. I've remodeled God knows how many houses. I've done all of those things, and I can tell you that that work takes as much effort and energy and time and risk as any other business. Now, you cannot do that, and you can miss something and make less money and not hit it like you would have otherwise, or even lose altogether. But passive income, any business requires time. Now, if you have a rental, do you have to go every single day? No, but you better go regularly. You better be checking in all of the time. You better be fixing the things maintenance wise that they should. Don't keep that money out. Put that 10% away and make sure you spend it upgrading all the things that you need to. I mean, it's just not there. I always worry about anytime somebody's trying to sell me something about how I should make a living. I wonder to myself, why aren't they doing the thing they're selling me? You ever
Yeah,
thought about that?
really. There is no
The
set and forget it in business. I think that's what you're saying.
yeah,
There's no
right.
like it's just good for it, we'll just let it ride. And I do agree with you, especially because there's so much media attention on we get into this mindset of like, what am I doing wrong? Why is it that I'm still working so hard? I should be like these other people, but like you say, you pull back the curtain and that's not legit.
No,
So,
no, no.
yeah.
I think I am the example for how you find success in America, generally speaking. And I have to say, generally speaking, because these dudes will always throw somebody at me that hit it big on the internet. It's like the Shopify stores, or not, but the resellers and things like that. I'm like, I don't know if y'all have looked at the numbers, but it's like 99% failure rate. So you're
Mhm.
going to find one guy that's going to be able to do that and who did it very well and who made a bunch of money. But
And
it's
it's not
generally people that
sustainable.
just
That's something
churn.
else.
No.
They have to stay up with the trends. Like they'll have e-commerce business as an example, drop shipping or
Yeah, that's what I
whatever,
meant. E-commerce, right?
and they can sell it while that product's hot. Then they need to be getting on to the next product because everything goes through fads and you got to stay on top.
Right.
And I mean,
And what's
it's
that take?
cool. What's
What's
that?
it take to do that? And what does it take to do all of that?
Right,
You got to work
right.
your ass off.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah,
No,
because you're
unless you're
dealing with
building
a
a
business with
brand, the ones that succeed long term, they build a brand, and there you go. Now
right.
being the face of your company, you're nurturing your audience. I mean, that's like a whole thing.
And
So,
that's the fun part. I agree with that. And that's the fun part for me. This is, I'm going to say this, so people understand. This is the fun part for me building the Kronos Group is I'm doing this largely online, and I've never done this before. So I've been on podcasts. I've had podcasts forever and all of that, but I've never tried to build a company primarily online. And so it's been going for a couple of months as I'm trying to just put this first group together. And I am learning like a baby in the woods, trying to figure out how to make this go. And a couple of guys that are with me on this journey, I keep having to tell them, no, guys, this is how businesses are built. It takes time and failure and effort, and nobody shows up to the workshop that you have. And okay, what did we do wrong? And where did I'm trying to do it without spending money. Not that I have a problem with spending money. I'm trying to. It's as much about the experience as it is anything. So it's been really, really frustratingly fantastic as I have come way out of my lane, living a very uncomfortable life trying to get this thing going. And I'm eating up every second of it because at 56 years old, I feel alive in a way that I probably haven't in 20 years. It's just been absolutely fantastic. Because starting over almost at the bottom and trying to build that thing up. But it takes an incredible amount of effort to try to make that happen, and a lot
yeah,
of mistakes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So where can people connect with you to learn more about the group?
They can go to thekronosgroup.org, and that is Kronos. Kronos was the god of time. And I thought, as putting together an entrepreneur group, a group of operators and business owners, that seems to make sense because there is never enough time is always the complaint. So I thought, okay, I'm going to show people that there is, and we'll just make it the Kronos Group. So thekronosgroup.org, you can see everything there. There are links there that could come in if you want to talk to me about it. Again, I'm trying to put these groups together, but if you just want to talk business, if you got an idea, maybe you don't think it's time for you, let's just have a conversation about it. I love talking about business, and no pressure, none of that. We know I'm putting the group together, but anytime I get an opportunity to help anybody and talk business, I'll be on one more thing, Lindsay, real quick. I have been helping people for years, and my 87-year-old parents who still live on their own, and my dad will still go to work for me because he's like, I'll die if I don't get up off the couch, told me at the beginning of the year, you've been talking about this Kronos Group. You've been talking about this consulting thing, this peer-to-peer group forever. Shut up or do it. And I thought, I have,
There's
because I
that
feel,
sentence again.
see, just shut up and do it. And because I feel bad charging for it. Right.
Mhm.
Because again, that background where I come from, I want to pass on what I've done. And who am I? I'm nobody special. And, there's nothing great about me. And so but I get frustrated with people who don't respond to the advice that I give them that I know is good advice. And so again, back to my group is like, no, man, you got to charge. Yeah, you have to charge. You got to put a group together and get people invested that way. And so I was like, okay, then I went in, with both feet. So thekronosgroup.org, you can find me there. JerryBrazie.com, JerryBrazie.com, Jerry Brazie, wherever, just look me up. And you will be able to track me down.
Cool. Excellent. Go do it.